Dubai just spent $35 billion on a new airport. On the surface, that looks like confidence. A city so successful, it needs more room to grow. But that's not actually what's happening here. Dubai isn't spending that money because business is booming. It's spending it because a country most people never think of as an aviation power has spent the last 15 years quietly building a machine designed to take Dubai's entire business model apart. For 3 decades, Dubai owned global air travel in a way almost no other city ever has. Emirates became one of the most profitable airlines on the planet. Dubai International still moves over 92 million passengers a year, and Emirates just posted $6.2 billion in pre-tax profit. On paper, none of that looks broken. But 5 years ago, Istanbul's airport handled 50 million passengers a year. Today, it handles 85 million. The gap between Istanbul and Dubai has collapsed from 40 million passengers down to just 7, and Istanbul is still growing faster. That's not 2 airports competing normally. That's one city closing in on another with startling speed, and it didn't happen by accident. To understand why, you have to think about geography the way an airline actually does, not the way a map on a wall makes it look. If you're flying from London to Bangkok, the flat map makes it look like the natural path runs southeast, down through the Mediterranean, past the Arabian Peninsula, straight through Dubai, then out across the Indian Ocean. That's the visual story. It's also wrong. The Earth is a sphere, and the actual shortest path between 2 points, the Great Circle route, curves differently than a flat map suggests. The real shortest path from London to Bangkok doesn't go anywhere near the Gulf. It arcs northeast, over Central Europe, across Turkey, then through Central Asia. The geographic center of that entire corridor isn't Dubai, it's Istanbul. Aviation engineers have understood this for decades. What changed is that Turkey decided to actually act on it. Back in 2018, with the Turkish lira collapsing, inflation running at 20%, and the currency losing nearly half its value against the dollar, the Turkish government still committed roughly $40 billion to build a single airport. Not because Turkish domestic travel demanded it, because Turkey had identified the one thing Dubai's entire strategy can never fix. You can spend your way around almost anything in aviation except geography. Start with the raw numbers. Istanbul sits within 4 flying hours of 55 countries. Dubai sits within 4 flying hours of 42. That 13-country gap represents hundreds of millions of potential passengers who can reach Istanbul without needing a long connecting flight at all. But the more important advantage is directional. Dubai's hub is built to capture east-west traffic, moving through the Gulf, London to Mumbai, New York to Bangkok, and Sydney to Paris. Those routes are real, and they're large. Istanbul captures something structurally different. Nearly every passenger flying between Europe and South Asia, East Africa, Central Asia, or the Caucasus follows a Great Circle path that runs directly over or near Turkish airspace. Istanbul doesn't have to attract those passengers with marketing or better lounges. It's simply sitting in their way. Turkish Airlines understood this before the new airport was even finished. Today, it flies to more countries than any other airline on Earth, 132 countries. Over 300 international destinations. That network didn't grow because of clever branding. It grew because Turkish Airlines systematically opened routes to mid-sized cities that no Gulf carrier could ever serve profitably. Cities that sit naturally on the path through Istanbul rather than through Dubai. Every time Turkish Airlines adds one of those routes, it isn't just adding a new destination on a map. It's permanently redirecting the flow of European passengers heading to that region away from Dubai's terminals. Each new route is a small structural loss for Dubai, and it's a loss that better service or nicer lounges can't win back. Istanbul's airport was designed for 200 million passengers at full capacity in a country with a population of only 85 million. The math was never about serving Turkish travelers. It was always about intercepting everyone else's. There's another layer to this competition that doesn't get discussed as openly. The Gulf hasn't been considered fully stable, airspace the way it once was. In late February, the United States and Israel launched strikes on Iran, and Iran responded with missiles and drone attacks against U.S. military bases, Israel, and several Gulf states. 8 countries announced full or partial airspace closures in response. Dubai International, the busiest international airport on the planet, went dark. Doha followed. So did Abu Dhabi, Kuwait, and Bahrain. Istanbul never had that problem. It sits north of the instability entirely, away from the same contested military zones. For risk-sensitive travelers, corporations with duty of care obligations, and insurers pricing aviation risk, that difference matters in ways a normal balance sheet doesn't capture. Dubai has never had to answer what happens to its hub if the Gulf closes. Istanbul has never had to ask. Then there's the aircraft itself. Emirates built its entire empire around the Airbus A38. The largest passenger jet ever put into commercial service. Over 500 seats, 4 engines, a premium onboard product that turns a long-haul flight into a genuine differentiator. But that aircraft is also a cage. The A38 only makes financial sense when it's flying nearly full, which means Emirates has to funnel enormous passenger volume through Dubai on every single route just to justify sending one out. The hub has to be massive because the aircraft demands it. Scale isn't a choice for Emirates, it's an obligation baked into the fleet. Turkish Airlines made the opposite bet entirely. Its main growth tool is the Airbus A321neo, a single-aisle aircraft carrying fewer than 200 passengers, but running at a cost structure that makes secondary, mid-size markets profitable from day one, routes that would never come close to justifying an A380. The strategic gap this creates is enormous. Turkish Airlines can open a route to a smaller city in sub-Saharan Africa or Central Asia, build market share patiently over 3 to 5 years, and use Istanbul as the connecting point for flights across Europe and North America. The economics work immediately. Emirates can't deploy an A380 profitably on those same routes, so it simply doesn't fly them. And every city Emirates skips becomes another feeder city quietly working for Istanbul instead. The cost structure compounds the problem further. Turkish Airlines is 49% state-owned, and Istanbul's airport operates under a state-backed concession. Turkish labor costs run somewhere between 60 and 70% below equivalent costs in the UAE. That's not an efficiency advantage Emirates can copy through better management. It's a structural cost gap set by an entire government's balance sheet, and no airline operations team can out-negotiate that. The pricing follows directly from it. A connecting fare from London to Bangkok routed through Istanbul runs roughly $160 cheaper than the equivalent Emirates product. For a business traveler, that's a rounding error. For a leisure traveler, $160 isn't a mild preference. It's the whole decision. Emirates' response has been to move upmarket cabins, lounges, the overall A380 experience, betting passengers will pay extra for the product. That's a marketing strategy layered on a structural cost disadvantage. Emirates can upgrade a seat, it cannot restructure the Turkish government's cost base. Which brings us to the third machine, the one Dubai built with its own hands. In 2024, the Emirates Group committed roughly 128 billion dirhams, close to $35 billion, to expanding Al Maktoum International Airport, targeting a full build-out capacity of 260 million passengers, the single largest aviation infrastructure commitment in history. The usual narrative frames this as bold, visionary expansion. The financial mechanics tell a much less comfortable story. Dubai International cannot meaningfully grow past roughly 110 million passengers. The city has physically enclosed it, residential towers, highways, and dense development boxing it in from every direction. There's simply no more room. Istanbul's airport, by comparison, has a 200 million passenger ceiling, with expansion phases built to add capacity incrementally. Only as demand actually shows up, capital deployed step by step rather than all at once. Al Maktoum is the opposite model entirely. It's a single, enormous upfront commitment. It only pays off if Emirates can actually fill it, and Emirates can only fill it by protecting and growing the exact connecting passenger volume that Istanbul has spent 15 years systematically pulling away. That's the trap. Al Maktoum's entire business case depends on a passenger pool that a foreign government is actively working to redirect elsewhere. Turkey didn't stumble into this position by luck. It built toward it deliberately. The airport, the route network, the fleet strategy, the cost structure, all engineered specifically to intercept the connecting traffic that Dubai's next airport now needs in order to justify its own existence. Dubai didn't choose to make a $35 billion bet on the future. It was pushed into making one because Istanbul left it no real alternative. If Istanbul reaches 150 million passengers by 2035, which is entirely plausible given its current growth rate, and Turkish Airlines keeps expanding its network at anything close to the pace of the last 5 years, the connecting traffic Emirates needs to justify Al Maktoum's operating costs might simply never show up. Not because the new airport fails on its own terms, but because the market it was built to serve had already relocated north. These three forces don't operate separately. They reinforce each other. Istanbul opens a new route, and that route quietly diverts connecting passengers away from Dubai. Fewer connecting passengers means Emirates' cost per seat rises across its entire network, since the same fixed costs now spread across a smaller passenger base. To protect its margins, Emirates raises fares. Higher fares push price-sensitive travelers toward Turkish Airlines instead. Turkish Airlines takes those gains and reinvests them into even more route expansion, which grows Istanbul's connecting network further, and the entire cycle accelerates on itself. The A380 makes this especially hard for Emirates to reverse. Its wide-body fleet is built for high-volume trunk routes, not the secondary cities where Turkish Airlines is quietly building its feeder network. Every city Turkish Airlines reaches before Emirates does, becomes a semi-permanent feed point for Istanbul, one that Emirates has no cost-effective way to compete for. Turkish Airlines is targeting a fleet of 600 aircraft by 2033. Emirates dominates the routes that already exist today. Turkish Airlines is busy building the routes that will exist tomorrow. In hub aviation, the advantage almost always belongs to whoever arrives first, and right now, Istanbul is already there. To be fair to Dubai, the case for its continued dominance is real, and it deserves to be said plainly. Emirates' $6.2 billion in pre-tax profit represents record revenue and record margins. Not theoretical potential, but actual, measured earnings today. Dubai as a destination in its own right drives origin traffic that Istanbul simply can't intercept. 17 million tourists a year concentrated in high-spending categories. Demand that exists because of Dubai specifically. Its hotels, its financial district, its role as a business gateway. Turkish Airlines can't manufacture that kind of demand just by adding more routes. And Istanbul's own airport carries real financial exposure worth noting. Its financing involved concession fees, state guarantees, and contracts partly denominated in foreign currency, signed during the worst lira depreciation in modern Turkish history. Some estimates of total debt exposure, once interest is included, run well past the original $40 billion figure. Turkish Airlines, despite its network growth, has posted volatile earnings, heavily exposed to dollar-price fuel, while much of its revenue comes in weaker currencies. That mismatch doesn't resolve itself just by opening more routes. Here's the risk almost nobody talks about openly. Istanbul's success depends on Turkish Airlines succeeding, and Turkish Airlines' success depends on Istanbul's airport succeeding. Each one is the other's single biggest bet. If either one stumbles, a currency shock, a geopolitical event, a leadership crisis, the other doesn't just feel it, it inherits the whole problem. Dubai, backed by Emirates, Etihad Fly Dubai, and the sovereign wealth reserves of Abu Dhabi, doesn't carry that same single point of failure. Every one of those counterarguments is genuinely true, and every one of them was equally true 5 years ago, back when the passenger gap between Istanbul and Dubai still stood at 40 million instead of 7. Dubai isn't losing its advantages. It's losing the margin by which those advantages used to outweigh Istanbul's, and right now, that margin is only moving in one direction. Dubai committed $35 billion to a new airport not because it was already losing, but because for the first time in 30 years, it can no longer be certain it's still winning. And that uncertainty wasn't an accident. It was manufactured deliberately by a country that studied Dubai's hub model for over a decade, identified its one real structural weakness, and spent 15 years quietly building 3 separate machines to exploit it. A geography Dubai can't replicate, a cost base it can't match, and a $35 billion bill it ultimately had no way to avoid paying. If you want to see exactly why that $35 billion bet became unavoidable in the first place, the full story behind Dubai's airport crisis is already on this channel. Subscribe to keep following where the real power in global aviation is actually shifting.